Welcome to yoga, everybody. Let's take this moment before our practice to settle into our sitting posture, have a straight spine, become mindful of our back. How can we sit tall? Notice the energies in the back. Notice our breathing. How does it feel to breathe? Bringing our attention to this present moment, here and now. Releasing all of the worries of anything outside of what we control here and now, in this form, in this pose. Noticing the most subtle energies of our breathing. Breathing sensitive to the pleasure of breathing. Noticing the life that is in every breath of air we breathe. How does it feel to be alive? How does it feel to have a body, to have a form, and to fulfill this form as we sit? Just simple posture. Let it bring a simple mind as we settle down and concentrate. Start to find your willpower. What is it that we have that's our own volition? Yogananda talks about the will and the volition as this energy, this life force that moves us through our bodies, that you cannot be alive, you cannot move a single muscle without your will. So even the smallest and the most subtle movements and motions, we're exercising our own will to fulfill this pose or that pose, or to move in this direction or any other. And as we exercise our will and we nurture it, we nurture what we have control over in our lives. And within our bodies, within our form. So as we think about this, finding our will, let's find the most subtle motion we can as we very slowly bring our hand to our heart. Let's bring our energy into vibrations in the room. We can Om together. We're going to take a deep inhalation with me. We can begin to open the eyes. We'll place our hands on the mat in front of us, starting in our tabletop. Finding our wrists underneath our elbows, gripping the mat with our fingertips and behind the knuckles. We'll start with a few cat and cow postures as we exhale, bowing the heart between the thumbs and opening the head, wearing the shoulders on the back, the curve in the spine. And inhaling the bow, lengthening the back, creating space between every vertebrae. And following through to pull your heart forwards and lift your tailbone up as you bow the ribs. Finding the rhythm of your breathing and following through with every inhalation and exhalation, warming up the spine, letting it awaken, come to terms with this day, with this form. How does it feel to be here? And we'll meet in a neutral spine. Warm up our shoulders as we reach the right hand overhead, growing it long, bringing it out to the right. Bring that shoulder blade onto the back, and gently threading the needle with that right hand behind the left wrist. The right temple comes down to the mat. Just notice the gentle twist in the spine, breathing into the lower back. Inhaling to release, come back into our tabletop, taking a cat and a cow to clear it out between sides, becoming very mindful of every vertebrae, of every little motion in the spine as we reach the left hand overhead and out to the left. Noticing the shoulder on the back, plugging it into the back. And then threading the needle with the left hand behind the right wrist, coming onto that shoulder, stacking the shoulders on top of one another, trying to keep those hips square as the shoulders stack, and noticing what that does to the back. Breathing all the way down to the lower back. Some full breaths of air. And inhaling back up to center as we release. Tucking our toes behind us, lifting our tailbone, finding our first Ardha Mukha Shavasana, downward facing dog. Pedaling on our feet as we exhale our heart to the toes, pressing our weight behind the knuckles and squeezing the hands together. Maybe walking out the feet, pedaling the left and right. Opening up the backs of the calves. Putting our weight onto our hands. And inch by inch, we'll step forwards. Coming onto our fingertips. Finding our forward fold. Releasing our weight to our feet as we grab the elbows and bow. Nod the head yes and no. Releasing any tension in the jaw and the neck. You can swing the shoulders and arms to the left and to the right. Noticing the hamstrings release under your own weight. And then release the elbows and let the arms dangle. Finding wherever they fall. You can inhale to look up, curving the back, opening the heart. Hands to shins, looking up. And exhaling to bow. And then hinging from our hips, we will rise. Growing tall, lifting up through the fingertips. And bringing our hands to our heart. Finding our steady mountain pose. We're going to begin with our classical sun salutation, being mindful of our balance, bringing our mind into the form of the body as we find the weight onto the left foot and test our balance with the right knee into the chest. Our standing balance. Take an inhale and grow tall, and exhale, pushing the hands out in front of us, kicking the foot out long. Inhaling back to center and exhaling as we step that right foot back, finding a low lunge. The toes come to the mat, the back knee comes down to the mat. Our feet are about hip distance apart as the left hand comes to the left hip and tucks it down, lifting that right hip up, trying to keep them in line with one another, keeping the knee just above the heel. Shoulder blades come onto the back. Begin in Anjaneyasana prep with our reaching the hands for the mat beneath us, trying to bring those shoulder blades down and away from the earlobes onto the back. Looking up, feeling the ribs pull into the core and finding strength here. Exhaling to bow, coming to frame that left foot, tucking the right toes, lifting that right knee off of the mat, and stepping this left foot back. We're going to bring our knees, chest, and chin to the mat. Lifting our tailbone overhead. Noticing the lower back release as we wag the tail. Placing our weight into our hands and keeping that back bend as we pull the heart forwards into a low cobra. Keeping our cobra very low at first. Seeing if we can keep the elbows tight to our sides, those shoulder blades onto the back, and trying to lift with as much of our core as we're lifting with our arms. And then we can tuck our toes behind us, pushing back into a child's pose, lengthening the spine, wiggling those fingers out as far ahead of us as we can, and tucking those toes behind us, raising into Ardha Mukha Shavasana, our downward facing dog. Lifting our right foot out behind us, a three-legged dog. Seeing how high it can grow, and mindfully stepping it between your thumbs. The left knee comes down to the mat. Finding our Anjaneyasana prep. Our hands come to our hips, pulling them into alignment, squaring them to the front edge of your mat. Shoulder blades come down away from the earlobes onto that back. Noticing the outsides of the shoulders pulling down towards the fingers as you reach your fingers for the mat beneath you. Looking up, opening your heart, and keeping the core strong, and finding stability through the entire body, from the top of the head, down through the back muscles and the core, and pulling those legs together isometrically so you're strong in our low lunge. Exhaling to bow as we frame that right foot, tucking the left toes behind us, lifting that left knee up and off of the mat. We can pick that foot up and bring it into our standing balance. However you get there, you need to tap the ground, that's okay. Finding our stability, finding our form, breathing into balance. Inhaling to grow tall and exhaling to kick this left foot out in front of us, pushing out through the heel. Inhaling with our hands to our heart. And exhaling our feet, come down to the mat. Taking a moment in our mountain pose. Seeing if we can find that same activation on the outsides of our shoulders, pulling those shoulders down to the side bodies and to the lower back, away from the earlobes. As we grow tall, lifting up from the top of our head. We'll inhale to rise, growing taller than you've been all day today. And exhaling as we bow. Letting go of all your stale air on the exhale. Inhaling up halfway. Exhaling to bow a little bit deeper, pressing our weight into our fingertips, behind the knuckles, stepping, hopping, or jumping, finding our plank pose. We're floating. Floating's good too. However you get there, doesn't matter. Finding our plank pose.
Sun's gonna show up.
It's habitual. We're pulling our fingers and our hands towards our feet, trying to keep a flat back, trying to keep a very straight line between the back heels and the top of the head. Trying to buckle the mat between the toes and the fingertips. Finding your stability and strength in your core, pulling your whole body together with the core. And maintaining that, keeping the elbows within an inch of the side body. Let's lower down very slowly for Chaturanga Dandasana. Very slowly coming to our bellies. And from our bellies, we're going to start with our palms up, hands to our sides. Looking up, locust pose, Salbhasana A, trying to lift your ribs up and off of the mat, keeping all 10 toes pushing down into the mat. Noticing the lower core pull up. And exhaling to release. Bring our hands beneath the shoulders, keeping them an inch above the mat as we inhale to rise into our cobra. Exhaling as our hands come down to the mat, trying to lift yourself as much with the core as you do with the arms, finding a gentle back bend, pulling the heart forwards and lengthening the spine. And exhaling, heart comes to the mat. We release. Let's bring our hands behind our back and bind them, opening the shoulders, opening the heart, seeing if we can lift the heart and ribs off of the mat, looking up and lift the heels. Finding our back bend, exhaling to release. Hands come beneath the shoulders. Find Savasana B. The Cobra pose. Really lengthening the spine, pulling the heart forwards with your arms, and tucking our toes behind us. Finding our downward facing dog. Pedaling up those feet. Squeezing those shoulder blades together as you pull the hands together and bow the heart to your toes. Try to create a curve in the back as you lift the tailbone all the way up. Keeping those shoulders away from the ears, pulling them down the back, feeling the back grow really strong here. You can step or hop or float, finding your way to the top of the mat. And bow. Noticing your bow. Once you've progressed in just a few minutes of a warm-up, you can inhale to look up and exhale. And hinging from the hips, we rise up, growing as tall as we can. Hands coming to the heart. Opening that heart. Finding our stability. Our weight comes to that right foot. The left knee comes into the chest. Finding our standing balance here again. Finding any steadiness, using a wall if you need to. Exhaling to kick that foot out in front of you. Lifting it as high as you can. Inhaling, hands to our heart. Keeping our weight onto that right foot. We can bring that left heel out behind us. Maybe you step down to a low lunge, maybe for the level 2s. Bring your heart parallel to the mat. Find a warrior 3. Very good. Try to lift that heel as high as your hips. You can bring our hands down to the mat for a standing split and bow over that right hamstring as you lift that left heel up as high as it'll go. And exhale as you bring that left toe down to the mat. The left knee comes down. Finding our low lunge, maybe a little bit wider this time, maybe a little bit deeper. As we're a little more warm, the body's used to moving. Let's let it grow. Start with our prep, reaching those middle fingers for the mat beneath us. And keeping those muscles on the outsides of the shoulders strong. Place your palms up and grow. Squeezing the hands together over our heads. Pulling these ribs into the core. And hinging from that place just above the belly button. Reach back and add a gentle back bend. Opening your heart to the ceiling. Exhaling into the back bend. Inhaling to rise up. Growing tall, lifting as tall as we can. Pulling our feet together isometrically as our hands come down to frame this right foot. The weight comes onto our hands. The left knee comes off of the mat. We step that right foot back into a plank pose. We're going to come down to our forearms, Finding a forearm plank. Finding a flat back. Lengthening the spine, using the fingertips to pull the heart forwards. Let's release the knees and the legs down to the mat as you lift the heart up. Adding a back bend in the Sphinx pose. Using all of the muscles in the forearms to push every bit of strength in the arms, pushing down to lift that heart up. Trying to pull the heart forwards, seeing how much weight you can put onto your arms and forearms, almost imagining if you were to lift your pelvis off of the mat. Exhaling to release, tucking our toes behind us, lifting into a dolphin pose with our forearms. It's kind of a downward dog with our forearms onto the mat, keeping those shoulder blades strong. We can tiptoe our toes forwards as far as feels comfortable until our hips come over our shoulders. And then we'll tiptoe the toes back into our forearm plank. Finding a flat back. Finding our stability here. And releasing into our Sphinx as we open heart. Shoulder blades pull down the back. Lengthening the spine as we look up. Exhaling to release. Hands come to our sides and behind us. Finding our locus, Salpasana A. Exhaling to release. The left hand comes in front of us, parallel to the top of the mat. We bend that right knee, grabbing the top of the foot. Finding the shoulders square, kicking that foot into the hand, half bow pose. Finding a little bit of a back bend, especially on that right side, trying to keep the hips and shoulders square as you lift the heart and lengthen the spine. Look up. Exhaling to release. Flipping our hands. The right hand comes parallel to the top of the mat. The left hand reaches back to that outside of that left foot. Kicking that foot into the hand, using the shoulder and the arm to lift the foot, and then opening your heart. Then looking up, lengthening the spine, finding our back bend, especially with the left side body here. Keeping that whole leg engaged as you engage that foot into the hand, using the arm to lift the foot. Exhaling to release. Hands come down to the mat. Hands come beneath our shoulders. We're going to lift up into our cobra. This time finding a high cobra, finding our head reaching for the wall behind us, tucking our toes to the mat, and pushing back into our downward facing dog, pedaling on our feet. Finding our weight onto our hands, pulling towards our feet, and pulling our feet towards our hands, using that isometric to try to lift the tailbone as high as it will go, as you're squeezing the whole mat with your core. Breathing all the way down to the lower back. Lifting our left foot out behind us, pushing out through that heel, lifting it tall. Stepping that foot forwards between the thumbs, finding our low lunge, keeping our stance, feet about hip distance apart, keeping it as long as you were on the other side. Pulling those shoulder blades down, the sides of the arms. As our core feels strong, the core lengthens the spine as we lift up from the top of the head. And when our stability is strong from our feet, we flip the palms and reach up. Squeezing those hands together with as much of our strength from the shoulder blades. And keeping the ribs pulled into the core as you reach those hands for the wall behind you. Finding your back bend exhaling all the stale air out of your lungs as you find your back bend. Inhaling to grow tall, lifting yourself up as tall as you are. And our hands come down to frame this left foot, tucking those right toes behind you, lifting that right knee, finding the left knee just above the heel, placing the weight into that left foot as you lift the right foot into our standing splits, bowing over the left hamstring, lifting that right foot as high as it'll go, and then finding our stability here. Maybe bonus pose or warrior 3, finding your balance, trying to keep that foot as high as the hips, our heart parallel to the mat. You can have your hands at your heart. Bringing that knee into a standing balance, tapping the ground between as needed. Finding your stability on the left foot. That right knee comes as high as the hip and maybe an inch higher. Pushing out to that right heel. Inhale to grow tall. Exhale to kick that foot out in front of you. Inhale to grow tall. And exhale our feet down to our mat. Taking a moment for our breathing. Noticing how it might feel different to breathe when we're warm. The change in our energy as we've transformed some heat into our body. Notice our heart beating. Finding our energy strong. And inhaling to rise up. Growing tall, hands come together. Reach for the wall behind you, opening the heart to the ceiling, finding a standing back bend. Inhaling to grow tall. And exhaling to bow. Hands coming to the toes. Inhale to look up. Curving that back. Keeping the shoulder blades engaged as you exhale and bow. Our weight comes to the hands. Step, hop, float. Find your way to your plank pose. Finding our plank. Stability here. You can always skip the chaturangas from here out and meet me in down dog, but I like my chaturangas. Finding your back bend. Tucking our toes, meeting me in Ardha Mukha Shavasana, handling those feet, finding your weight onto that left foot as you raise that right foot all the way behind you, bending the knee, stacking those hips, trying to square those shoulders so nothing in the upper body changes from our down dog to when we find our three-legged dog. You stack those hips and bend the knee, then see if you can look underneath your left armpit and see your right toes. Squeezing those hands together. Exhale, bringing that right foot out behind you again, and then stepping it forwards between the hands, finding our high lunge. Finding our stability with our feet. I like to keep the feet almost hip distance to keep balance strong. And here we're going to bring our hands behind our backs and bind them, opening the heart as we look up, reaching those hands for the heel behind you as you bow into your front leg. Inhaling to grow tall. And exhaling to bow the shoulder to the inside of that right leg. Exhaling to release, growing tall. Bring our hands overhead. Refinding your balance, finding yourself wherever you are in your high lunge. And exhaling into the back bend, opening that heart to the ceiling, bending into that right knee. Exhaling again to bow and framing that right foot. Weight comes off the leg. That right foot steps back, finding your plank pose. Another optional chaturanga. Finding the level of practice that suits you. Finding your back bend. And meeting me in our dog. Taking a few breaths here to regain your composure. An appreciation for the stability of this simple pose. With our weight onto our hands and on the right foot, let's lift that left foot behind us. Keeping the shoulders exactly where they are. Bending the left knee, stacking those hips. And look underneath your right armpit. See if you can see those toes. Keeping those hips stacked, so you lift that left hip up a little bit more and bring it a little further behind you. And point the toe. And exhale to release, finding our three-legged dog. And stepping this left foot forwards between the thumbs. Finding our high lunge on this side. Find your stability. Shoulder blades pulled down to the low back. Keeping those back muscles strong. Finding our hands behind our back, the opposite finger, opposite thumb on top. As we open the heart, bend into the left knee, and look up, reaching our fingers trying to point towards the right heel. As we find a little back bend, opening the heart to the ceiling, exhaling all the stale air out of your lungs into your back bend. Inhaling up to grow tall. Full inhale, breathing all the way into the shoulders. And exhaling again to bow forwards. The left shoulder comes inside of the left knee. Trying to keep your heart parallel to the mat. Feeling that hip open, squeezing those feet together. Inhaling to grow tall. Releasing the bond. Hands can come to your heart or go overhead. Squeezing those hands together, bending into that left knee as we find the back bend. Keeping your stability as you pull your feet together. And exhaling down to frame that left foot. Weight onto the hands, lifting that left foot off the mat and stepping it back. Meeting me in our down dog, however you get there. And we'll bring our knees to the mat, finding a child's pose moment. So we bring our fingers as far ahead of us as we can, lengthening both side bodies. Tucking our toes behind us, lifting up into our down dog. As we lift that right foot behind us, bending knees, stacking those hips, finding our weight onto our left hand. See if you can reach that right hand off of the mat. Step that right foot down into our wild blade, finding a back bend. Very good. Trying to lift those hips. Breathing here, keeping those shoulder blades strong, pulling them together, using the strength from the core and the side body to lift your foot up.
Which foot? What foot?
Your right foot. To step back into our down dog. Finding our down dog. We'll play with our wild thing on the other side.
Is that what it's called?
Wild thing. It's not a classical pose. I don't know that there's a Sanskrit name for it, but it does feel wild. So the left foot raises tall behind us. You can bend the knee and stack those hips, trying to lift that left hip all the way up as high as it'll go, as far behind you as it'll go, looking underneath the right armpit, looking at your toes, lifting that left foot off of the mat, and stepping that left foot behind you into the back bend. Lift those hips. Lift as high as they go. Yeah. Very good. Opening the heart. Finding your stability, feeling the strength in your shoulder. And then lifting that left foot. And stepping it down into our dog. Paddling on our feet. And we'll find a child's pose. Taking a moment to lengthen the spine. We can walk our fingers all the way over to the left, breathing into that right side body, hollowing out that right armpit as you cross the right hand over the left. And then come back to center. And walk our hands over to the right, crossing the left hand over the right. Hollowing out the left armpit, breathing all the way down into the left kidney, full breaths of air, oxygenating your organs on that side body, coming back to center, lengthening both side bodies as we reach forwards, breathing into the lower back. Then we're going to lift into a tabletop and walk our hands to our knees until we're in a kneeling posture. So you might want to do this against the wall if you're not super back bendy, but we're working on our camel pose. So here we want to be long through both side bodies, having our shoulders open. Our hands can reach behind us and reach for the heels. You can always have the wall there that might help you be able to get back up. If you're not used to the back bend, try to keep your hips just above your knees as you open the hips and try to lift your side, or lengthen your side bodies and lift the center of your core up, bringing the ribs into the core, keeping the core strong to protect the lower back, and then keeping the upper body exactly where it is. See if you can bring your hands to your heart. And then lift yourself up with your core. You can always walk your hands up the wall. That's easier. So we're going to try this again into our camel. Lengthening. You can reach one hand or the other, or both. Finding your ankles. Trying to keep those hips just above the knees as we open the heart. This time, bring our hands to the wall. See if you can walk your hands down the wall as you feel comfortable.
Down or up?
Only where it feels comfortable. And then walk back up.
I need a neck brace.
Trying to keep the neck in line with the spine. We'll do our last camel, this time walking our hands down the wall to start. Trying to reach our head for the heels. Only finding as much back bend as feels strong in your core. Lifting yourself back up. Hands to our heart. And we bow. Finding our tabletop and coming down onto our bellies. Let's open it up into our back bend, tucking our toes, and finding our downward facing dog. This time we can lift our right foot behind us, finding our balance on that left foot and the right hand, and see if we can lift our left hand overhead, opening the heart and lifting the tailbone, trying to find a little bit of a back bend here. We find our two-legged dog. You can stay here if this is a challenge for you. If you would like to reach the left hand behind you and bend that right knee and grab the top of the foot. See if you can find the dancing dog. So in the dancing dog, we want to be pulling our left hand in our left hand to pull the right foot up. The right hand squeezes towards the left foot on the mat. Using your core to lift you. And exhaling to release. Finding our dog. Pedaling out the feet. Bowing the heart towards our toes. We're going to lift the left foot behind us. Open the heart. And lift the right hand overhead. See if we can find a little bit of a back bend here as you look up and lift your tailbone. Bending the knee and maybe finding the dancing dog. Trying to grab that top of that foot, keeping the shoulder blade on the back. Find the dancing dog as you kick the foot into the hand, try to let it raise, adding to our back bend. Opening the heart, trying to bring the shoulders square. And exhaling to release. Bring our hands to the mat. And walking our feet to our hands. Finding our forward fold. Taking a moment to bow, releasing the back of the neck. Releasing any tension in the shoulders. Maybe grabbing our elbows again in our ragdoll. Try to grab the opposite elbow as when we warmed up. Letting the weight of your head dangle. And releasing the elbows. Inhaling to look up. Exhaling to bow. Finding the height of our shoulders. Keeping them at this height as we bend our knees. Finding Utkatasana, the chair pose. Didn't think we could miss chair pose in a class. Trying to open those shoulders onto the back, opening the heart. You can either squeeze the hands together overhead or keep palms out. Trying to bring that tailbone behind us, lifting your toes up and off of the mat, opening the heart, reaching all the way up. And exhaling as we bow into a half chair. Heart comes parallel to the mat. And bow. Finding a standing split with the right foot lifted out behind you, bowing over the left hamstring. You can point the toe and bend that right foot and lift that left hand overhead. Reach it behind you. See if you can grab that inside of the right foot and find Natrejasana, the dancer's pose. Finding your stability wherever it is.
Why is this easier? Because they're more square.
It's
They're not
more in the legs,
round.
less meat in the arm.
Ah.
It's a little bit less core. So maybe that's why it's easier for you.
Yeah.
Find your balance in your dancer, any form of it that works for you. We'll exhale to bow. Hands come to the mat. Let's jump this left foot back, finding our three-legged plank. Keeping that right foot lifted. The foot long. Lowering down into a chaturanga. Keeping that foot lifted. We're going to find a cobra with that right foot lifted. Tucking the left toes, finding a three-legged dog. And stepping our right foot forwards between the hands. And the left foot comes forward to meet it. You can look up. And exhale to bow. Finding Utkatasana, the chair pose. Opening that heart. Finding that back bend. Finding the core strong, pulling those ribs into that core. Exhaling to bow. Lifting the right foot off of the mat. I think it's the right foot.
No,
Is it the opposite? Left foot. Left foot. Thank you. Lifting our left foot, finding our standing split. Finding your stability on that right foot as the right hand reaches behind you and you bend the knees. See if you can grab that inside of the left foot. Testing your balance in a dancer's pose. You can keep the left hand on the mat if that's stable for you. Maybe you can bring that left hand to your heart as you kick the left foot into the right hand. Try to lift that foot as high as you can. Maybe you reach this left hand forwards and up. Finding our dancer. Holding here for 3 breaths. Finding your stability. Breathing more and more into balance. As we exhale to bow, hands come down to frame the foot. Both hands come down. The left foot stays lifted. Our standing split. Put our weight into our hands and hop this right foot back into a three-legged plank, keeping that left foot lifted. To our three-leg plank. Our wrists just beneath our shoulders, bending the elbows at our sides as the heart comes down for chaturanga. Opening that heart into a cobra, keeping that left leg lifted as much as you can. And pushing back into our three-legged dog. Stepping our left foot forwards between our hands. Runner's lunge. Bowing those hips square. Releasing any tension from that leg. And then stepping that right foot forwards to meet it. Inhaling to look up. Exhaling to bow. Bending our knees. Finding a chair pose. Letting our chair grow low and lower and lower until we find a malasana squat. And you bring the legs, the knees to the outside of the shoulders. Finding your yogi squat, however you get there. Finding our stability. We can add our binds with the left hand coming around that left leg. That right arm reaches behind the back. Finding a little twist. Trying to stack those shoulders on top of one another. Full breath here into the back body. And exhaling as we release. Finding Malasana. Keeping that shoulder on the inside of that right leg. And that right arm reaches around. Left hand can reach up and around back. They don't have to touch each other. Just try to stack those shoulders to find that twist in the spine. Exhaling to release. Hands come to our heart. We're going to sit onto our glute. Bringing our feet together, the soles of the feet together. Finding a butterfly. Letting our arms bring those legs closer to flat. As we open the feet, trying to get all 10 toenails onto the mat. Lengthening the spine as we sit tall. And exhaling to bow with a flat back. Bowing into those hips. Inhaling to grow up, sitting tall. We're going to bring our hands in front of our right leg and swing that left leg around into our pigeon pose. Coming onto our forearms, pulling our heart forward, lengthening the spine in our pigeon. Letting your own weight bow into your hips with each exhale, melting deeper, closer to the mat. You can stay here in Sleepy Pigeon, or if you'd like the challenge, you can come onto our hands, bend that left foot behind you, point the toe, reach the left hand to grab the foot. You can stay here, or you can find a cactus arm with that foot onto that inside of the elbow. There you go. Other hand can reach behind your head and try to grab that finger as you square the shoulders and find mermaid. Or merman in my case.
Merboy.
Merboy. Cool back bendy pose. Finding any variation of pigeon. Exhaling to release. Tucking those left toes behind you. Lifting that right foot. Stepping it back into our dog. Pedaling out our feet. And our left knee comes to the heart, the left ankle behind the right wrist. Finding pigeon. Coming onto our forearms, starting with our sleepy pigeon. As we square those hips. Exhale the hips closer to the mat. Every breath. Letting go of any tensions in the legs and in the back. The more we let go, the deeper into our pigeon we become. We can stay here, sleepy pigeon, or come up onto our hands, bending that right knee, and reaching that right hand for the right foot. Maybe finding a back bend here. And option 3, you slide that foot to the inner crease of the elbow, bringing that shoulder square into our cactus arm. Reach the left hand behind the head into our mermaid. Merman, merboy. Finding our pigeon wherever it works for you. And exhaling to release. Rolling onto our left hip As we bring that right leg forward, it's in front of us. Let's keep the left heel in towards the glute, about palm distance from that right leg. And we can exhale to bow, bring our hands to the right foot. Maybe staying here, maybe squeezing that inner left leg towards the left side body. You can bring that left arm around the back and add a bind as you reach your head for your toes. Inhaling to sit tall. We can cross that right elbow to the outside of the left leg and exhale into a twist. Letting go of all the air in your lungs as you exhale. Inhaling to sit tall. Unwinding, flipping our feet. That right foot, palm distance from the left thigh. Heel in tight towards the glute. Bring our hands forwards to frame that front foot. You can stay here or bring the right hand around that right leg, reaching for your hip. And the left hand can reach around and find the bind, reaching your forehead for those toes. Exhaling to unwind. We're going to cradle that right foot. Place that right heel to the left hip. Bend the left heel to the right. Finding our cow face. Arms come out long. Left hand can come behind the back. The left hand behind the head, right hand behind the back. Left arm is on top, stacking the left elbow on top of left shoulder, right elbow underneath right shoulder, opening our heart as we bow, breathing into those shoulder blades, giving them some love for all that they've worked for us today as we release, unwinding our hands, unwinding our feet, flipping our grip to the left heel, to the left hip, that right heel, we cradle our feet, left heel to the right hip, opposites on top. Arms come out long. Right hand behind the back, right hand behind the head, left hand behind the back. That was symmetrically wrong on both sides. Opening our heart and sitting tall. Exhaling into our bow as we release any tension in the shoulders. Taking full breaths into that shoulder, that left shoulder. And exhaling as we release. Unwinding the hands, unwinding our feet. And roll onto our backs.
Grabbing the outsides of the feet, rocking side to side. Keeping the tailbone rooted. We bring our arms into a T and the knees come off to the right. Keeping the shoulders square and evenly mounted on the mat. Then bring those knees over to the left. Keeping that right shoulder flat on the mat. And then sitting tall, bringing our knees to our chest. And bringing our legs out long. Finding our savasana. We bring our shoulder blades underneath the heart, up the back. Sit with our palms up, hands at our sides. Noticing your breathing.
Feel your heart pushing blood and oxygen, and nutrients, and love into every corner of the body that have worked today. Moving our awareness through the spine, noticing how much lighter, how much more free the body has become through this practice. Bringing that lightness down to the toes and the fingertips as we begin to wiggle them. Bending the knees into your heart, giving yourself a hug. You've earned it. You can rock side to side and roll over onto the right side body, feeling yourself renewed and reborn. Refreshed and fulfilled. Pushing yourself up to a seated position, your hands at your heart, your eyes closed, bringing your awareness into this posture, this form we began our practice with today. Feeling the vibration flowing through you. As we begin to awaken. You should each be very proud of yourselves for taking this time to take care of you for this practice of yoga. The love enlighten me honors that love and light in all of you. Namaste.